Hey, welcome. Today we're going to get into something pretty radical, a whole new way to think about why we do the things we do. It's based on an idea called structural cognition, and honestly, it might just change the way you look at, well, everyone.
This is it, right? This is the big question. We spent so much of our lives trying to figure this out, for ourselves and for other people. We're always looking for clues in what people do, what they say, but what if we've been looking in completely the wrong place?
You know, the standard answer, the one we all kind of grow up with, is that you've got to focus on what you can see. You focus on the behavior. We analyze it, we react to it, we try to change it, we treat on actions like they're the source of everything.
But here's the core idea we're going to unpack today. What if that focus is just an illusion? What if looking at behavior first means we're actually missing the real story completely?
Just think about it for a second. We see what somebody says, or what they do, what they run away from, or what they chase after, and we automatically assume that this is the fundamental unit of understanding. This is where it all begins.
But what if it's not? And this line, right here, this is the pivot for everything we're talking about. The idea that our actions aren't the starting point at all, they're the end point. The real origin of change? It's something called architecture.
Okay, so let's dive into that. Let's explore this deeper layer. What in the world is architecture in this sense? Well, it's the hidden framework that's running the show long before anything becomes an action.
And this is so important to get. This is not a metaphor. We're talking about a literal, technical description of a thinking system. It's kind of like the actual blueprint for a building. That blueprint is what determines the building's shape, how much weight it can handle, and exactly where it's going to crack when it's put under pressure.
So when you look at it this way, you have to toss out a lot of our usual labels. Forget personality or mindset for a minute. This model says we need to look at the system's raw structural conditions, its shape, its limits, its breaking points. It's a whole different set of specs.
So, the main thing to keep in your head, the mantra of this whole idea, is just this. Structure comes first. Structure precedes behavior. The underlying design dictates what's possible and what's not, way before a choice ever enters the picture.
All right, so let's get into the mechanics. How do these pieces, the shape, the load on the system, and how it bends, how do they all work together to create what we end up seeing as behavior?
First up is what's called topology. And really, this is just the shape of the system. Just like a bridge or a skyscraper, some cognitive systems are really flexible. They can bend easily. Others are more brittle, almost glassy, and they're more likely to shatter under pressure. That initial shape determines everything else.
Next, we have to talk about load. Now, we all talk about feeling stressed, right? But that's a subjective feeling, an emotional response. Load in this model is different. It's an objective, structural demand being put on the system. All the pressures from the environment, from other people, from our own thoughts. It's the total weight that the architecture has to carry.
So what happens when all that load meets the system's shape? You get deformation, bending, and this happens in stages. First, there's elastic deformation. The system bends, but it bounces right back. Add more load and you get plastic deformation. It bends and it stays bent. It's been permanently changed. And finally, you get to structural failure. The system just collapses or breaks apart.
And this, right here, this explains so much. It tells us why behavior can seem to come out of nowhere. When we ask, why do they suddenly snap? We're actually asking the wrong question. It wasn't sudden at all. The architecture was bending and creaking under the surface for a long, long time before that final action ever became visible. This brings us to another huge piece of the puzzle, one that explains why change isn't always this smooth, gradual thing. It's all about crossing thresholds.
So thresholds are these exact tipping points built into the architecture. Think about the precise point where a piece of wood under pressure goes from being solid to just snapping. It's not a slow decline, right? It's a sudden shift in state when a very specific structural limit gets crossed. That's a threshold.
So what we often romanticize, as a sudden breakthrough or this incredible act of willpower, well, it's often just physics. The system simply reached its architectural breaking point, and the change had to happen. It wasn't some magical moment of inspiration, it was structural mechanics playing out. And when you start to put all these pieces together, it gives you a completely new lens to see through, a totally different way to look at ourselves and everyone we interact with. It's like having a map to the invisible forces that are shaping our lives.
So here's the whole sequence, from start to finish. It begins with the architecture, the design of the system. Then load gets applied to it. That causes the structure to deform, to bend. This tests the system's ability to hold itself together until, boom, a critical threshold is crossed. And only then, only at the very end of this whole structural cascade, does behavior finally appear.
And this leads us to such a powerful takeaway. Behavior isn't the origin of anything, it's the residue. It's what's left over after all the real action has already happened, deep down at the structural level.
And this is exactly why we get each other wrong so often. We take that final residue, the behavior, at face value. We completely ignore the person's unique internal architecture. We have no idea what kind of load they're actually under, and we make the huge mistake of assuming their system works just like ours.
This gives us a totally profound reframing of other people. What if someone isn't being difficult or irrational? What if what we're actually seeing is an architectural system that's just responding to load, exactly as it was designed to do? It completely removes the personal judgment and replaces it with, well, structural analysis.
And the implications here are massive. This isn't just about psychology or self-help. Think about building artificial intelligence. This changes how we could design truly smart systems. One's built on a stable architecture, instead of just teaching them to mimic behaviors. It's a fundamental shift in thinking.
So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. The next time you find yourself reacting to what someone is doing, just ask yourself, am I interacting with their behavior, that surface-level residue, or can I start to see the architecture that's hidden underneath? The answer might just change everything.